Hello everybody, my name is RenaLink43 here, and today I'm going to be doing a CreepyPasta with a little bit of Team Fortress 2 gameplay in the background. I mean, this is obviously not going to be the greatest of gameplay because I'm not going to be paying much attention to Team Fortress 2 as I'm reading the reading the CreepyPasta. But I guess it just gives something, nice to just look at while stuff is going on. While I'm reading and stuff. So I'm probably just going to sit in this corner and maybe just shoot bullets every once in a while just because I feel like it. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this creepypasta. This is called My Creation, and it's about a video game programmer. I'm already dead. I already tried to read this once, but then my video started to stop working. So, whatever. Let's do this. Alright. Being a programmer, one of my dreams has always been to create an original video game. Something that nobody in the industry has done before. After seeing Spore, I became intrigued. Here was an attempt at putting people in control over a universe. After looking at what made video games popular, I realized the main aspect was control. People in their daily lives have no control over their environment. They're told what to do, where to go, and how to live. Their jobs consist of standing or sitting somewhere until it's 5 p.m., and they're allowed to head back home. It's no mystery they're unhappy. For many people, video games are an escape to fake lives filled with adventure. The aspect of control is found in strategy games, the adventure and role-playing games generally. I looked at games like The Sims and noticed what made them so popular is not just the illusion of control, but the degree of control. You have complete control over people's lives. Before The Sims, there was Sim Earth, a game in which you do not control individual people, but an entire Earth. I came to the conclusion that I had to develop a game similar to Spore, in which the player subtly guides evolution. What caused Spore to be such a failure is the lack of realistic control people had. It hardly resembled evolution. To do this, I began by generating a physics system. I know little of physics, but decided to study it, and try to create a simplified version in which certain particles can interact in specific manners. When it comes down to it, physics is simply complex mathematics. I simulated energy and matter and created a simple system, with a sun emitting energy circled by a planet catching said energy. I decided to create simple basic cells from scratch that were hard-coded, so to speak, in the system I was designing. They lived off to the energy emitted by my sun and had a genetic code that coded for the substances produced by the cells. I guess you could call them eukaryotes. Alright, I know this is probably extremely confusing by now. It sounds like it to me, and I'm sure it sounds like it to you. I guess basically this guy is a video game programmer who is studying physics to make a very realistic physics-based game engine. Alright, so I guess we've got that down. Nothing creepy has happened yet at all, but just to get that out of the way, I guess this is what's happening. I get it if you're confused. I am as well. I decided to expand the physics. Wait, what? Okay. My world within a few minutes would always fill with these cells, after which they would mutate. And the most efficient cell in converting energy from the sun into useful substances for division would survive. It was very boring, but it worked, I guess. I decided to expand the physics system and force the cells to create waste products that were toxic and would kill them. I noticed that some cells responded to this by producing less waste. Others responded by producing something to emit the waste, yet others developed chemicals to clean up the waste products. However, I noticed something fascinating. Running the simulation for a few centuries, a few minutes in real life, created cells that made massive amounts of specific waste products on purpose. I noticed that the other cells died as a result of this, to which the other cells responded by usurping the building blocks they had created from energy. The first predators were born. With the first predators, diversity in this little world rapidly increased. Some grew a response to flee when they encountered these toxins. Others grew resistance to them. The ones that grew resistance would eventually grow to utilize the toxin's products. Eventually, I noticed something interesting. The cells that had escaped from the toxin grouped with the cells that utilized the toxins. They stayed close together and helped each other. Eventually, these type of cells would attach to one another. They formed a weird symbiosis, where the cells would normally flee, would now move towards places where the toxins are, and the other cells would consume the toxins and provide the mover with some of the energy. Without going into too much detail, I became very excited, and decided to let this simulation run during the morning. I'd stayed up until 5 a.m. while I went to bed. When I woke up at around 11, I noticed the world I had created had changed and was barely recognizable. Massive plant-like structures grew in the world, consumed by other organisms that ate these plants. However, looking at the log, I noticed the world hadn't changed much in the past 2 hours or so. I reached another stasis point, where the simplicity of my simulation prevented more complex life from evolving. I expanded the system by breaking up energy into different types, with different wavelengths that were absorbed to different degrees by different molecules. I implanted vibrations in the air, created an improved simulation of weight, and made some more minor tweaks. This caused the simulation to run slower, of course, but it was worth the sacrifice. I stayed around the whole day watching the simulation in excitement and playing with it, and it was incredibly addicting. Complex organisms evolved that cooperated, plants that depended on each other or attracted predators that ate the horrible-looking creatures that ate from them. I had fun, and noticed that some creatures evolved warning cells. This means that if they notice a predator, they would issue a sound, and all other kinds would flee into holes that had dug in the earth. Others evolved mating cells. Alright, I'm just going to go back to the idea of just explaining everything that's happening right now. I think what's happening, once again, is his world that he's created after programming everything is starting to evolve to what he didn't think it would. And it's starting to become more like an actual world where these cells he's created are just evolving into actual things, and this world is becoming legit. Also, I really think this is just explaining how his world is just becoming more and more realistic, and he's just throwing in a bunch of science mumbo jumbo in there just to make this CreepyPasta sound cool, which I'm not saying is bad. I'm saying I think that's actually really cool, because I like science mumbo jumbo, especially when it's done in a creative way like this. But, I mean, sometimes science mumbo-jumbo is hard to understand, and this is just, a way to, explain it, I guess. Alright, let's go back to the creepypasta. I decided to have some fun. I made a dump tool, allowing me to dump specific organisms on the Earth, and wrote my name with it. I created 10 meteorites, and dumped them on a piece of land to create an island, because I wanted to see whether the animals stuck on both sides would evolve in different directions. I made a smiley island with volcano eruptions. By that time, I'd realized I'd stayed up until 5 a.m. again, as I heard the birds outside. I felt tired again, and woke up at 1 p.m. or so. When I looked at my simulation again, I felt a sense of shock. Different groups of animals of one species had made statues with stones, some in the form of a smiley, some in the form of my name. I didn't know why they were doing this, or how. What I did notice is that they would attack each other from time to time. I didn't know what to do with it, but I concluded that these organisms must have somehow noticed that the smiley and the name I had written were special. The fighting disturbed me, and I decided to create a massive mountain ridge through volcanic eruptions to separate the two groups. By this time, changes were happening fast, compared to earlier. While I had to spend a night sleeping to see tribes evolve in my simulation, while I was getting something to eat or take a bathroom break, I would notice the tribesmen wearing different styles of clothing, or having changed their type of dwelling. Their numbers were also continually increasing. At some point, I noticed the creatures began making their own symbols on the ground, and no longer copying mine. Most of the symbols seemed random and unintelligible to me, but one stood out. The organisms had created a symbol that resembled them, a small circle with a square beneath it. Within the square, a dot could be found in the center. This was meant to symbolize the visual organs of the creature, as the creature had two visual organs, one in the front of its body and one in the back. In the square, other sensory and reproductive organs were symbolized. Next to the circle on top of the square could be seen something resembling a drawing of a fork. Two of these forks have been painted in opposite directions, and next to the smiley face could be seen. I realized something. They were not communicating towards each other. They were trying to communicate to something out there. By meddling in their landscape had somehow made them realize that something powerful was out there, capable of changing their world. I wondered whether symbols like Stonehenge and the pyramids in my own world could be signs of primitive people trying to do the same thing, begging their creator or overseer to initiate contact with them. However, one thing was undeniable by now. These creatures realized something was out there. I wondered long, did I have a responsibility to initiate contact with something that isn't real? Or are these creatures real in a different way? Can something be real merely by being capable of having a concept of itself? And even if they are real, does that mean they will be better off by me initiating contact with them? Should I change my simulation to ensure them permanent happiness? And is it even possible for me to do such a thing? I do not want to confirm my existence to them, but I do want to be able to communicate with them. I decided to program a prophet, an organism that looks like them and cannot be given by them to be different from themselves and is fully controlled by me. Alright, stop time again. So basically, this guy, the organisms he've created, have started to realize that there's a guy out there, the guy that's created them, and which is this guy, and he's starting to think, oh, hey, these guys probably think I'm God. And so he created the prophet, which is like the pope of his world that just goes around telling everybody stuff because he doesn't want to truly prove to everybody. I'm sure there's gonna be some crazy plot twist that he's actually God or something. I don't know, but yeah, so far that's what's going on. This guy is smart organisms and stuff. All right, let's continue. I let it be born in a powerful position as the son of a leader. I decided to lead by example and seek to teach these creatures English so I could communicate with them. As prophet, I instructed them that English was the language we could use to communicate with the greater one. They would have no way to be sure if it was true or not. I hadn't made up my mind yet whether I would reveal myself or not, but I did want to be capable of understanding what they wanted to tell me. In a few generations, they all spoke English. And rapidly, signs began emerging on the ground in English. Guide us, show us your greatness, help us. And during times of disease or hunger or general misery, give us food, show us a miracle, end our suffering. I decided that I couldn't maintain a world with such suffering as emerged in the simulation without intervening. Why would I accept a world with death and rape and murder if I can make on without it? Whoa, that scared me. I implemented fixes that were gradual, so they could not be proven to be miraculous. Murder and rape would over the years become rarer, and so would death at a young age. I figured that they would not notice if the change happened over generations, but they did. Thank you. All blessings be upon the greatest. We love you, and most heartbreaking, come back to us. Tears ran over my face. There's something there, and it knows I'm here, able to contact them, but unwilling to do so out of fear of what I've created. But I felt I had a responsibility. And so, I loaded up the character I'd created again, and went to their king, asking to talk to all their wisest men. But by this time, I was not believed. You are number 13,041, claimed to be an avatar of the greatest one. If you are him, I pray for your forgiveness, but please, show us a sign, before demanding of me to gather all of our wisest men. And so I hesitated, but responded. Tomorrow there shall be 2 more meteors, falling on a deserted island in the sea before you, on the same day. And when they do, doubt no more and realize that I have come back to repair the broken world that I created. And so I exited my avatar and progressed the simulation until the next day was reached, and threw 2 meteors at the deserted island before the mainland, where thousands had gathered to watch whether a sign would be given. Upon the descent of the meteors, celebrations were held. All the sentient organisms gathered around the small house where I had exited my avatar, and lay flat on the ground, in apparent worship of the man who was last seen there, and afraid of coming. I don't know who was more afraid by now, me or them. I loaded into my avatar again and exited the house. The creatures continued to lay flat on the ground in utter silence. It is as if they felt unworthy of speaking. Let your wisest man stand up, I told them. And up stood one of these bizarre-looking creatures. I hesitated before saying, there's nothing you can do for me that pleases me, but for you to be good to one another and to contact me with your wishes and fears. Okay, so this guy's truly, becoming the god of his world. Really becoming the god of his world. And he's really just, taking into the entire god complex and just everything. This guy's just, full deal. Alright, so far I like this. It is kind of complicated. But I'm not going to get into what I think about it right now, because that is going to be saved for the end. Alright, the creature responded, we know you come from a different world, and we are afraid. We understand how vulnerable we are, and how incomplete our experience is. Please allow us to join you in the world that you created our world from. I began crying behind my computer as I responded, I do not know how. The creature responded, at risk of offending you, please understand the severity of our situation. By living in a world that is incomplete, we are at consistent risk of disappearing forever, never to be seen again. We would never even consciously realize that our end has come. I realized that they were unable to comprehend that that I only had absolute power within their world and not outside of it. They also did not realize that my knowledge of the world was limited. I may have created it through simple laws, but those simple laws gave way to a reality of its own that is more complex than I can comprehend. I responded again. I only have power in your world. In my world, I have no power, and so I cannot bring you there. Because my world is not under control. I also do not understand the world I have created. I do not know what is best for you. Only you do, and you have to inform me what you want. Wonder what's going on in the game over there. You created a world that is incomplete, with creatures that cannot escape it, and you have no power to save them. They are completely unfree, and they have no power. We are completely at your mercy, and so we ask you from the deepest of our hearts, end us. By now I was crying, as I was confused and asked to do the impossible. My own child was asking me to kill it. This is when I noticed the lights in my room flickering, before my computer suddenly shut down. I screamed. Upon trying to turn on my computer again, I noticed it wasn't working. I called the power company, who told me that due to an accident, a power surge had traveled through the grid. They promised me they would pay for any damage. I hung up and contemplated. The coincidence of what had just happened was too great to be imaginable, and I wondered, if these creatures were at the mercy of a confused creator, could the same be said of me? And if so, did my creator just prevent me from repeating his own mistake? Alright, so that is my creation. That was an interesting creepypasta, and I'm going to give my quick little review on it right now. So with my creation, I feel like it's definitely interesting. It's definitely a complex and thoughtful story. I really don't think you'll understand it at all if, you don't really contemplate this stuff ever. You really need to think about, just the idea of God and what's going on in the world for this to actually make sense. And I think the eeriness and creepiness of it all, it just goes on with the fact of thinking, what if people start acting this way? What if people start thinking this way just like the organisms did in his story? What if people just start being weird like that and that just starts happening? I mean, that's probably the creepiest and eeriest part of this entire thing. I mean, I guess you could also say that one of the creepy parts of it was how they seem to completely know what was going on. Yeah, man, that guy must have been a really good game creator. But I would argue that the creepiest part of this entire thing is just the idea of thinking, what if, I'm sorry I couldn't really get much better gameplay going on in the background. I mean, it's kind of hard to read and then play at the same time. I just kind of was pressing on the W, A, and D buttons and slightly shooting at random moments. But yeah, I mean, that was my creation. It was a decent creepypasta, and if this gets good feedback, I think I will probably continue this, because that was fun. That actually really was fun, and I enjoy reading creepypastas, and I enjoy giving my review. I think I really like the creator of this creepypasta. I feel like this guy can go long ways doing more intelligent, thoughtful creepypastas like this. That's cool. That actually is really cool. Just the idea of that stuff. I mean, I don't know what else he could do. I mean, he's the creepypasta maker after all. He's the creative one. So yeah. I hope you guys have enjoyed this creepypasta, my creation. And I hope this video actually ended up working, because if it didn't, then wow, I just wasted 20 minutes of my life reading a creepypasta to nothing. Alright guys, well, if this did work, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.